welcome to the vlog, and today I wanted to jump into a chatty vlog and share a little bit more about my experience at Disneyland. So you all, if you are familiar with my videos, you know I like to do a little bit of a recap when I get back, but today's recap is going to be a bit different because it's been requested over on Instagram, and I know a number of people mentioned in the comments what my thoughts were on Disneyland versus Walt Disney World. So for background, I've grown up my entire life going to Walt Disney World. Since I was a wee baby, I have gone to Walt Disney World. So I'm very, very familiar with that property, with the setting, with the things that are offered there. And even though things change from year to year, you know, I've been back basically every single year of my life. So it's what in the Disney world you would call your home Disney place, right? So I'm very familiar with Walt Disney World. And our family has continued to go there as well after I had my girls and you know, bringing them back and then eventually going on Disney cruises. But I just recently had the experience of being able to go to Disneyland for the first time. So I did go to a retreat out in California, which was located right next to Disneyland, and got to partake in a lot of activities at Disneyland and California Adventure. So I thought I would share my thoughts today on not only my experience at Disneyland, but also the question that everyone has: what do I think now about after having been at Disneyland versus Walt Disney World? So first things first, these are two very different properties, right? So if you've been to both of them, you're gonna know everything that I'm getting ready to say. Walt Disney World is a very large, expansive, it's about the same size as San Francisco, the entire city, large property. It has 4 theme parks, tons of resorts, tons of restaurants. It is its own little city in its own right. It is its own city, and it's set off on its own outside of Orlando and Kissimmee in its own little bubble per se. And so you can literally take transportation onto the Disney property of Walt Disney World, and you're in the bubble is what it's called in the Disney World. You truly are. You are immersed in Disney. The signs are Disney. You are doing everything Disney, and you do not need to leave for literally any reason unless you want to. So it is a fully Disney immersed experience. And so that is what I have done for the majority of my life. And so going to Disneyland, the original, was really, really cool because you could see the origins of Walt Disney World at Disneyland. And so the setting, first of all, at Disneyland is extremely different. You are down in the middle of Anaheim. I showed this in a number of videos looking out my hotel window, where it's literally a cityscape and a theme park sitting right in the middle of it. So Anaheim has grown around Disneyland on every single side. It's basically landlocked. There are hotels everywhere. You can walk to certain things. There are parking lots if you're driving in from a different location. And so it's a theme park setting with a city surrounding it. So you're very much surrounded by the city. And then of course, all the beautiful landscape of California. You can see the mountains off in the distance. I absolutely love that. So the setting, first of all, you can be very immersed in Disney when you are at Disneyland or Disney's California Adventure. But then if you leave property, if you're not staying at one of those Disney resorts, which I'll get into a little bit later, you are very back aware that you are in a city. I didn't really mind that so much. I am very used to the idea of being in the Disney bubble. So I do think that if we go back with Dan and the kids, this was a question that I got in DMs a ton on Instagram. Will you go back? I think we will end up out there at some point. It's not planned right now, but do I think we'll end up out there? Yes, at least once, just to see it. If we do go back, I do kind of see us staying at one of the Disney resorts. So there are 2 Disney resorts at Disneyland. And one opens up right into Disney's California Adventure, and the other one is right next to Downtown Disney, which both are convenient. And I do see us staying at one of those resorts and being as in the bubble as you can. Still, when you look out your resort window, you still may have the chance of looking out into a cityscape, but you're still just right there in a very walkable, accessible distance from the theme parks and the shopping and the dining and all of those things. So I do feel like that's probably how we would tour. And just to answer this question, because I think people were kind of like hinting at this, kind of trying to beat around the bush a little bit, like, where do we plan on going the most? Do we plan on continuing to go to Walt Disney World, or are we gonna totally like flip the switch and start going out to Disneyland all the time? So we are currently located in Minnesota. So let's be honest, both of them are pretty far away. But for travel's sake and just ease of time zones, it is still easier for us to get to Walt Disney World. So I still feel like that's going to be our home theme park, our home location, because going from Central to Eastern is a little bit easier rather than jumping 2 time zones, and it's just a little bit more travel distance and all of that to get out to California. So frequency wise, I still see us going to Walt Disney World. And also, you know, we like to do the idea of staying at different resorts each time. So we do really try to make our trip a little different from the time before. And so we're trying new things, trying new rides. There's always something new coming into Walt Disney World. I think that's kind of the big thing, that people that maybe aren't as familiar with it, haven't been in a long time or haven't been at all, it is like its own city that's getting new restaurants, new rides, new activities pretty much every single month. There is something new going in there. So when we go back this next time, this summer, our family has a trip planned. Tron's going to be open, and none of us have done that yet. I'm going to a conference in April, which I may do it in April. We'll see how that pans out. But there's new rides. We'll try new restaurants. There's so many restaurants we haven't eaten at. So there's still a lot to do there that's new. But of course, everything at Disneyland was new for me, and that was really exciting. So if you look back on the first video where I'm literally walking in for the first time, oh my God, everything's so cute. It's like just slightly smaller. It's adorable. I literally almost lose my breath, I think, at one point in the video, because I literally just kind of like almost gasp, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels so familiar. But I'm very aware that I'm literally thousands of miles away from where we live, thousands of miles away from Florida, and that it's not the same place. But walking down Main Street, it's very surreal, because if you're used to Florida, it feels like everything's just a little bit shrunk down. And I think at one point in the video, I even say, everything is so cute. I texted that to my husband, and I was like, it's adorable, because it's just a little bit like 30% smaller than the Florida location is what it feels like. Obviously the reverse is true. I am quite aware that Disneyland was first, and then they just supersized it for Florida. But when you're so used to going down to Walt Disney World, Magic Kingdom, and then you walk into Disneyland, it's like, oh my gosh, it's adorable. So that was a really, really neat experience. But then I had to, it was really surreal, honestly, because I had to keep reminding myself as I was walking down Main Street, and the Emporium's over there, and the bakery's over there, the confectionary's over there. And like literally, it's almost a mirror. It's slightly different, but it's pretty mirrored as you walk down Main Street. You get to the end, and of course the castle is very different, and you have the choice of going right or left. And at that point, I had to keep reminding myself, like, I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know what's on the other side of where I go right or left there. Because I've been to Walt Disney World, I've been to Magic Kingdom enough times in my life. I know basically where all the bathrooms are. I know where all the restaurants are. I know where to get merchandise. I know all of these things without having to look at my app, without having to reference that. And so it was different this time, because a few times I might need to use the restaurant, or I was looking for a particular food item, and I'm literally having to look it up on my phone and figure out where these things are. So that was a new experience. But all very good, because I feel like the Disney apps, for as much, you know, Disney groups can be kind of hard on Disney IT, so I'm just going to preface this. Disney groups can be kind of hard on Disney IT, and I realize sometimes it really doesn't work. It's kind of frustrating when you get up at 6 a.m. and you're trying to book all of your dining reservations and the whole site is down. I completely get that. But for all things considered, as massive as a corporation this is, as many moving parts as there are in those apps. Disneyland has its own app. Walt Disney World has its own app. And you can do mobile ordering, reserve your dining, you know, do everything inside the app. There's maps for restaurants and restrooms and attractions. You can look at wait times. For everything that has in these apps, they are quite easy to use. I will say that. So, you know, pulling up the Disneyland app, it looks exactly like Walt Disney World's app, where you can search by function of restaurant or put in your mobile order. That all felt very easy to use. Being in some place that for all intents and purposes was foreign to me, it was all very easy to find my way and know where I was going. So that was all good. But as far as like stepping foot into Disneyland and being there, it was really exciting, because I never really knew what would bring me out to Disneyland. I always figured I would be there at some point, but I never really knew what it would be. So the stars kind of aligned. I was wanting to do a retreat this year. This retreat happened to be out at Disneyland, and I thought, like, this is it. Like, this is the perfect fit. So it was really, really neat to be able to see it. I really enjoyed being able to try the things like the Nemo submarine ride that is not at Walt Disney World. There's a number of those things that I was able to try. Matterhorn, It's a Small World is completely different. Pirates has some things that are different in there. Haunted Mansion is a little bit different. So it was neat to kind of be able to partake from that point of view and be able to try things that either just completely don't exist at Walt Disney World, like the submarine ride anymore, or are slightly different. You know, like Pirates is pretty much the same with a few little changes. Like there's the whole beginning is different, honestly. Like there's different drops and all of that. So that was really interesting to be able to do that compare and contrast. In fact, I also think in one of the videos, I literally said at one point, I promise I will stop comparing. I don't know if I ever did, but it was neat to be able to compare and contrast those things. So Disneyland was very, very awesome. It felt very familiar because I'm so used to going to Magic Kingdom, and I very much enjoyed my time there. Like you could just feel, this is gonna sound cheesy, but you could feel in the soul of the place, like it was like there was so much just kind of, I guess, passion and enthusiasm poured into it. Like you could just feel that historic presence, which was, it was really cool. And then, so the other really neat thing is, so if you're walking in from the transportation, which I'll talk about that in a minute, you literally look to your right, Disneyland is there, it's got the train station and everything you would recognize from being at Magic Kingdom. And then you literally turn to your left, and it looks like the front of Disney's Hollywood Studios. It's Disney California Adventure. So that part was a little weird for me because I'm not used to being able to stand in one place and see a theme park entrance here and see a theme park entrance here. That was a little surreal. But I got used to it. After about the first day, I was like, oh, this is great. And it honestly worked out fabulous. The one tip I will absolutely say, if you're going to Disneyland and you have not been there before, and say you've toured Disney World and you know how you like to tour at Disney World, take this tip in consideration. Park hopping at Disneyland is a must. I mean, you almost shouldn't even go to Disneyland without getting a park hopper, right? This is my opinion, because the parks are so close to each other, or the ability to park hop if you have an annual pass. The parks are so close to each other. I literally just found myself walking back and forth between the two theme parks all day long, and you completely can do that. By about my third or fourth day there, I was going to ride Soarin', and then going to ride the Haunted Mansion, and then going. It may not be recommended if you're trying to keep your steps down, but I was having a ball because I also did the Genie Plus, which worked really, really well for the California property. And honestly, Genie Plus probably, like, it makes a little bit more sense now seeing how Disneyland is set up, because it works the best at that property. I think it was probably kind of really designed with Disneyland in mind. Genie Plus is a little harder to use when you can't just walk back and forth between the properties, and you have to factor in the transportation of potentially having to hop on a bus, go to a different theme park, and all that transportation time of getting in another entrance and all of that. It's a little bit more cumbersome at Walt Disney World to park hop. Not impossible, because obviously one of my last trips there, I did 4 parks in one day. Not impossible. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. But literally at Disneyland, you could just sit there and walk back and forth between the 2 parks all day long. I had a ball. I think it was about my 3rd day there, just going back and forth. Park hopping and the Genie Plus system, the paid system, completely made sense there, because I was getting a Disney Genie Plus, time in one park, and then I was deciding I was going to hop over to another park, and then just scrolling through and seeing if the ride I wanted to do met my times, and you could completely just bounce back and forth like that really, really easily. So I really enjoyed that part. The ease and accessibility, I'd say, is like some of the, top point parts of going to Disneyland. Having those 2 parks so close together is really, really great. Disney California Adventure is a really unique park. I really enjoyed this one. In fact, it might have been my favorite. So I really love roller coasters. You have to understand that about me first before I go into why I liked it. They also had their food and wine going on at the same time that I was there. It actually opened one of the first days I was there. And so that was cool to be able to see that. I'm just going to go ahead and say, and I'm probably going to get some flack for this, Epcot food and wine still kind of wins that showdown for me. Epcot's just bigger, it has more options. I felt like it was easier to get food, and I like the selections at Epcot a little more. Don't come after me. But I did enjoy being there and trying the different things. The number one stand for me was maybe the berry patch, where it had that awesome cold brew and the delicious blueberry pie. So, so good. And then also top points go to the Snickers macaroon and Nuts About Cheese, the Petite Beretta, also very, very good. Nuts About Cheese and berry patch, my two like must-sees at Disney's California Adventure Food and Wine Festival. The drinks were really kind of flops for me, which was kind of a bummer because I have a number of drinks that I love getting at Epcot, especially their festivals. I'm looking forward to getting the Violet Lemonade at the upcoming Flower and Garden Festival that I'm going to be at in April. Food and Wine has a ton of great offerings, and I find a lot of not only food but drinks there that I really, really like as well, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. So when I say drinks, some of them may be alcoholic, some may not be. I couldn't find a single drink at the Food and Wine Festival at Disney California Adventure that I really love, to be honest. But a lot of it tended to be very citrusy. I'm not a huge citrus drink person, so keep that in mind. And also, I really like a mixed fruity drink. If it's got alcohol in it, it's got to be like super mixed in, and I could just taste the alcohol too much. Not that I couldn't taste alcohol too much, I didn't like what it was mixed with. Anyhow, was not up my alley. So we'll just say that. But the food was very, very good, and especially those two stands I liked. But the park overall, the festival aside, the park overall, probably one of my favorites. It had like a lot of my favorite things like smashed into one place, which was super cool. It had Soarin', which is one of my favorite rides. Right now they're showing Soarin' over California, so that was really neat to see all the different terrains of California. Had this really cool big play area, which my kids are starting to kind of outgrow that stuff, but they would still go in there and play. Really super cool if you have kids that need to just climb and burn off some energy. In the back, it had Pixar Pier, and so I wasn't really sure like if this area would be like too kiddie for me, or I wouldn't really like it, or I wasn't sure what I would think about it. I actually ended up loving Pixar Pier. So I really like roller coasters that I mentioned at the beginning, and so the Incredicoaster was a huge win for me. I went on this multiple times. I absolutely loved it. I had a blast. I loved how they immersed the story throughout the ride, but it was still just a really fun ride as well. And this, I would say, if you have a child that's not gone on a roller coaster that's gone upside down and they want to try one and you have access to go on this coaster, it is like literally hands down the best coaster for a child to go upside down for the first time, because there's just that one inversion right in the middle. It's nice and smooth. It was a super smooth ride, and it was so fun. I went on this ride a number of times. It was a great, great ride. So I really, really enjoyed that. I also went on the Ferris wheel, which I've heard a lot of nicknames for that. We'll just go ahead and leave it like that. The ones that move back and forth, it was a little nerve-wracking. It didn't stress me out quite as much because I knew they were supposed to slide back and forth, but it's still a little stressful when you're up there and one of those little gondola carts, and then all of a sudden you just start sliding backwards. It's a bit stressful, but I still had fun. I'm glad I tried it. They also have the stationary ones if you don't want to slide back and forth. I'd probably make the kids slide. I don't know if Isabella would do it, honestly. She's not my roller coaster child. Natalie would do it. She's my roller coaster child. She would love Incredicoaster. So if you have a kid that loves coasters, Natalie is one. They'll love Incredicoaster. The other standout ride at Disney California Adventure for me was the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, Mission Breakout, over in the Avengers campus. So our family loves Star Wars and we love Avengers. We've watched all the Star Wars movies and Avengers movies in chronological order, and that's how we shared them with our kids, so they could get the sense of the stories and how they all came together. So a little bit of background. We really like the, kind of Avengers stories, the Marvel stories, and Natalie is actually very into comic books as well. So I was kind of nerding out a little bit in Avengers Campus, and I thought it was so cool just to be able to walk around and like see the Avengers, and they just be walking in the middle of, the path. It was really, really neat. But then Mission Breakout for me, I just hit everything at the perfect time the day that I was there for the first time. So I'm walking in and I'm like kind of nerding out a little bit, right? Because it's playing the Avengers music and I'm all hyped up and I'm just kind of really excited to be there. And I walk in, I happen to walk up to Mission Breakout. There's like a 15-minute wait, which I've heard never happens. So there's like a really low wait time for Mission Breakout. And I'm like, great, that's where I'm gonna go. I wanna ride this ride. Because I also love Tower of Terror, by the way. So, you know, the dropping rides, I like those. As long as I know it's supposed to do this, I'm fine with it. But I walk over and right, literally, as I'm stepping up to Mission Breakout to figure out where the entrance is, Gamora and Star-Lord come walking up and they're just like bantering, and then like a whole little mini show comes up, and it's on the Times Guide, but I had not planned this. I literally just walked up and the show started literally right in front of me. And it was so cute. It was like a little dance off, and they played well, you know, off of each other if you know their characters. So that was like how I kicked off my entrance to go into the Avengers campus, which was perfect. So I watched part of that show and then I went to go ride Mission Breakout, and that ride was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. It was so fun. If they could ever retheme the Walt Disney World one, I would probably be camp retheme it to the Guardians of the Galaxy. Previously, I don't know if I would have said that, but after riding it in California, it is so fun. I loved it. Not to spoil it too much, but as you go up, there's different scenes, and then, you know, it drops you, just like the Tower of Terror in Florida, and then you go up again, and it's a different scene, and Guardians of the Galaxy is hilarious. So if you haven't seen it, definitely watch that movie. It's one of my favorite Marvel movies and series of Marvel characters. So that was just a really great way to jump into being at the Avengers campus. So I just took in some time, walked around there, and I went back there a number of times. I saw the Spider-Man show, I rode the web slingers. It was fun. You have to like sling your webs. You just do this the whole time, and you try to, not to ruin the story, but you try to, you know, help save the world. And I did okay. I didn't do the best. I'm not the best with those rides like Pixar, you know, the Midway Mania, where you're trying to like get points. So at those rides, but it was still fun. The Spider-Man show was really, really great. All the characters in the Avengers campus were really, really fun. I really enjoyed that. So I just got to see a lot of those different elements. And then the other area that's really unique at Disney California Adventure is Cars Land. And so that is really, really neat, especially if you have younger kids. Like my kids had their Cars phase, and they enjoyed Cars and all the characters, and that was a really fun ride. The Radiator Springs ride is very like Test Track. I completely see why. I felt like someone just picked up the Test Track ride and then dropped it in there and put some, you know, Cars theming on it. But it was still super fun. It's nice, like the elements of being outdoors and being surrounded by like those big like kind of mountainscapes. It was just really, really pretty. So overall, I really enjoyed both theme parks. I'd say that probably Disney California Adventure was like my favorite, just because it had so many new things that we don't have at Walt Disney World and that I hadn't done before. I also really, really love the Avengers campus, and obviously that's something completely unique to there. And also Pixar here was a huge win for me. But you can't beat the nostalgia of classic Disneyland, right? So me walking in and being like, oh my gosh, you know, like this is adorable. Like there's so much wrapped up in that statement, because it's not just like, oh yeah, this is cute. It's like this is where Disney World came from. And so you get all of that sense of nostalgia walking around this place. And that part was really, really neat. So long story short, do I think we will go back to Disneyland? Do I think I will be back there? Yes, I think I'll be back at some point. So do I think that we'll be out there at some point? Yes, I think we will definitely have a trip out there at some point as a family. I do think that I'll be back for either a conference or a retreat at some point. And we do have other things that are on our vacation wish list that are maybe going to be happening a little bit sooner, like an Alaska cruise and that sort of thing. But I think it's definitely someplace that our family could go and really have a great time and have a unique experience as well. There's a lot of things around there that we'd probably try to do, like San Diego Zoo and that sort of thing. So it could be a really, really unique trip to that area. But coming up next, I'm headed to Walt Disney World for a convention, for a conference. So I'll be sharing what I'm going to be doing there. Tron is going to be open after I'm there. Flower and Garden Festival is going to be opening, so I'll be sharing all of that. And then we do have a trip planned to Walt Disney World as a family coming up later this summer. We're going to be going for Dan's birthday, and actually Food and Wine will have just opened when we're there. So both of those festivals coming up, and we'll be sharing what we do at those. So Walt Disney World is where we are headed next. It definitely is what I would consider still our home park, and I think it's the easiest for us to get to, but I love the nostalgia of Disneyland. I love the ease and accessibility of being able to go back and forth between the theme parks, and I think it's just a really great nostalgic place that Disney fans should visit if you're super into Disney, right? I mean, it's where it all began, is in California. So I think it was just a really neat place to visit for the nostalgia. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be diving back in with some day in the lives coming up your way here pretty soon, working on some organization and spring refreshes, and some also requests that you had about spring outfits and summer outfit inspiration. So those will all be coming up very soon. And thanks for watching today. Have a great day.